as Zara Williams stepped out of the black Bentley. Every eye in the room turned toward her, and the $3 million custom Valentino gown she wore like armor. But just 12 hours earlier, this same woman had been crying in her tiny Atlanta apartment, holding an invitation that was meant to destroy her. Let's rewind and see how we got here. Zara Williams sat in her cramped studio apartment in downtown Atlanta, staring at the cream-colored envelope that had just arrived. Her name was written in elegant calligraphy across the front, Miss Zara Williams. The return address made her heart skip a beat. Celeste Montgomery, the Celeste Montgomery who had made her life miserable at Emory University 5 years ago. The same woman who had stolen her research ideas and presented them as her own. The same woman who was now married to one of Atlanta's most powerful tech entrepreneurs. Why would she invite me to anything? Zara whispered to herself as she tore open the envelope. The invitation was for an exclusive charity gala at the Four Seasons. Atlanta's elite would be there, and at the bottom, in Celeste's handwriting, was a note that made Zara's blood boil. Zara, darling, I simply must have you there. It's been so long since we've seen you. I told everyone about your current situation. They're dying to meet the brilliant researcher who's now working as a hotel concierge. Zara pulled the note. She knew exactly what this was. Celeste wanted her there as entertainment, a cautionary tale. Look what happens when you don't play the game right. But what Celeste didn't know was that Zara's life had changed dramatically 6 months ago, when she met Jin-Woo Park. Jin-Woo wasn't just any man. He was the heir to Park Industries, Korea's largest fashion and technology conglomerates. More importantly, he was the man who saw past Zara's circumstances to the brilliant mind and beautiful heart beneath. Their love story had begun in the unexpected way. Zara was working the front desk at the Ritz-Carlton. Jin-Woo arrived for a business meeting. He'd forgotten his presentation materials in the hotel room and was panicking about the multi-million-dollar deal he was about to lose. Sir, I can help, Zara had said calmly. In 15 minutes, she'd not only retrieved his materials but had also spotted a critical error in his financial projections that would have cost his company millions. Jin-Woo had been stunned. This beautiful, intelligent woman working behind a hotel desk had just saved his deal. That night, he'd asked her to dinner. 3 months later, he'd asked her to marry him. But their relationship wasn't simple. Jin-Woo's mother, Hae-won, was traditional Korean royalty when it came to family expectations. She had already chosen a suitable Korean bride for her son, someone from their social circle, someone who understood their world. Zara and Jin-Woo had kept their engagement secret, planning to announce it properly when the time was right. That time was supposed to be next month, during a family trip to Seoul. Now, staring at Celeste's invitation, Zara felt something fierce awakening inside her. She picked up her phone and called Jin-Woo. My love, his warm voice came through immediately. How was your day? Jin-Woo, I need to ask you something, and I need you to trust me completely. There was a pause. Jin-Woo knew that tone. It meant Zara was about to do something that would change everything. What do you? Asked simply. I need to borrow the Midnight Rose. Jin-Woo's breath caught. The Midnight Rose was a one-of-a-kind Valentino gown, commissioned by his mother for a state dinner in Seoul. It was worth $3 million, covered in hand-sewn diamonds and rare Korean pearls. It was also a symbol of Korean fashion excellence, representing everything his family's company stood for. Zara, what's going on? She told him about the invitation, about Celeste's cruel note, about how she'd been humiliated years ago and was now being set up for too. I could just ignore it, Zara said quietly. I'm tired of running from people who try to make me feel small. I want to show them exactly who I am, who we are." Jin-Woo was quiet a long moment. Then he said something that made Zara's heart soar. "The dress is yours, but Zara, you don't need $1 million gown to show them who you are. You're magnificent exactly as you are." "I know," Zara replied, "but sometimes you need to speak a language please understand. And in Celeste's world, that language is money and power." The next morning, a team arrived at Zara's apartment. They were from Park Industries styling division hair, makeup, jewelry, and accessories specialists who normally worked with Korean celebrities and politicians' wives. As they transformed Zara, thought about her journey. Growing up in a single-parent household in Oakland, she'd learned early that intelligence and determination could take you anywhere. She'd earned a full scholarship to Emory, graduated summa cum laude with a degree in biochemistry, and had been accepted to PhD programs at Harvard and MIT, but life had other plans. Her mother's cancer diagnosis meant medical bills that scholarships couldn't cover. Zara deferred her graduate studies to work and support her family. When her mother passed away 2 years ago, Zara found herself starting over at 26, taking whatever job she could find while trying to rebuild her dreams. Meeting Jin-Woo had changed everything. Not because he was wealthy, but because he saw her potential and encouraged her to pursue her dreams again. He'd helped her apply to research positions at the CDC and had connected her with professors who remembered her brilliant undergraduate work. But tonight wasn't about her future career. Tonight was about respect. The team finished their work at sunset. Zara stood before her bathroom mirror, and for a moment she didn't recognize herself. The midnight rose fit her perfectly, as if it had been designed for her body. The deep midnight blue fabric hugged her curves elegantly, while diamonds caught the light with every movement. Her hair was styled in an elaborate updo that showcased vintage Korean pearl earrings. Her makeup was flawless but natural, highlighting her warm brown skin and bright eyes. She looked like royalty, which technically she was about to become. Jin arrived to pick her up in his Bentley. When he saw her, he actually stopped walking and stared. Zara Williams said softly, "You are absolutely breathtaking." "Thank you," she replied, adjusting her diamond bracelet. "Are you sure about this? Once we walk into that party together, there's no going back. Everyone will know about us." Jin took her hands in his. "I've been ready to tell the world about us since the day we met. The question is, are you ready for what comes after tonight?" Zara thought about it. Dating the heir to a Korean business empire meant scrutiny, cultural challenges, and family politics she couldn't even imagine. It meant potentially facing racism and criticism from both communities. It meant her life would never be private again. But it also meant love. Real, honest, supportive love with a man who believed in her dreams and encouraged her to pursue them. "I'm ready," she said firmly. As their car pulled up to the Four Seasons, Zara could see the red carpet through the window. Photographers were everywhere, capturing Atlanta's elite as they arrived for what social pages were calling the event of the season. "Remember," Jin said softly, "you're not doing this to prove anything to them. You're doing it to prove something to yourself." Zara nodded, took a deep breath, and stepped out of the car. The cameras immediately started flashing. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as people tried to figure out who this stunning woman was. Zara walked with confidence, her head high, every step deliberate and graceful. Inside the hotel, the ballroom was decorated like a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers, white roses, and gold accents created an atmosphere of luxury that most people only dreamed of experiencing. Zara scanned the room and spotted Celeste immediately. She was wearing a red dress that probably cost more than most people's cars, holding court with a group of Atlanta's social elite. Her husband, Bradley Montgomery, stood beside her, looking bored and checking his phone. It was time. Zara walked across the ballroom floor, every conversation stopping as she passed. She could hear the whispers starting. Who is that? That dress must cost a fortune. Is she famous? She's stunning. Celeste looked up just as Zara approached her group. For a moment, her face showed pure shock. Then her expression shifted to forced friendliness. "Zara, darling, you came," Celeste exclaimed loudly. "Everyone, this is Zara Williams, my old college friend. Doesn't she look interesting?" The emphasis on interesting was meant to be an insult. It was Celeste's way of highlighting that Zara didn't belong here, that she was trying too hard, that she was out of her league. But before anyone could respond, Jin-Woo appeared at Zara's side. "Sorry I'm late, my love," he said, kissing Zara's cheek gently. "I had to a call with Seoul." The group's eyes widened. Jin-Woo Park was well known in Atlanta's business circles. His company had recently invested heavily in several local tech startups, and his presence at any social event was considered a major coup. Jin-Woo Montgomery stepped forward eagerly. "I didn't know you were coming tonight." "I wouldn't miss supporting such an important charity," Jin-Woo replied smoothly, "and I wanted to accompany my fiancé." He said the word fiancé clearly, making sure everyone heard it. The silence that followed was deafening. Celeste's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: shock, confusion, anger, and finally, a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Fiancé," she repeated weakly. "Zara, you didn't mention in your correspondence that you were engaged. You didn't ask," Zara replied calmly. "You seem more interested in my job situation." One of the women in Celeste's group, a thick blonde with too much plastic surgery, leaned forward eagerly. "That's a gorgeous dress, honey," she said to Zara, her tone dripping with fake sweetness. "It looks almost like real designer work." "Where did you find it?" Zara smiled. "It's Valentino custom piece. Actually, it was featured in Korean Vogue last month when Jin-Woo's mother wore it to a state dinner." The woman's smile faltered. "Korean Vogue, yes," Jin-Woo added helpfully. "My mother is quite influential in Korean fashion circles. She had this piece specially commissioned. The diamonds alone are worth about $2 million." He paused, then added casually, "She insisted Zara wear it tonight. Said it would be perfect for her first appearance, my fiancé." Celeste looked like she might faint. Not only had her plan to humiliate Zara backfired spectacularly, but Zara was apparently engaged to one of the wealthiest men in the room and wearing a dress that cost more than most people's houses. But the night was far from over. The group stood in stunned silence. A commotion started near the ballroom entrance. Security guards were escorting someone out, and voices were getting louder. "This is a private event," one guard was saying firmly. "I have an invitation," a familiar voice replied angrily. "I belong here just as much as anyone else." Zara turned to see what was happening, and her heart dropped. Standing near the entrance, arguing with security, was someone from her past. Someone who could ruin everything. Someone who knew secrets that could destroy her relationship with Jin-Woo forever. The person spotted Zara across the room and smiled a cold, calculating smile that made Zara's blood freeze. "Well," the person called out loudly enough for half the ballroom to hear, "if it isn't Zara Williams, playing dress-up with the rich folks, still pretending to be something you're not, I see." Every conversation in the ballroom stopped. All eyes turned toward Zara, then toward the person at the entrance, then back to Zara. Jin-Woo stepped closer to her. "Zara, that?" Before Zara could answer, the person broke free from the security guards and started walking toward them, still talking loudly. I think it's time everyone knew the real story about Zara Williams, the person announced, about where she really comes from, and what she really did to get where she is. Zara felt her carefully constructed evening beginning to crumble. All her confidence, all her plans, all her hopes for finally standing up to Celeste, everything was about to be destroyed by the one person she'd never expected to see again. The person who knew about the biggest mistake of her life. The person who could prove that maybe, just maybe, Celeste had been right about her all along. The ballroom felt like it had frozen in time. Every conversation stopped. Every champagne glass paused halfway to lips, and every eye focused on the drama unfolding before them. The person walking toward Zara was someone she hadn't seen in 3 years. Marcus Delacroix, her former research partner from her Emory days, and the one person who knew about her biggest regret. Marcus, Zara said quietly, her voice barely audible over the sudden silence in the ballroom. What are you doing here? Marcus was still the same as she remembered, tall, lean, with dark skin and an arrogant smile that suggested he enjoyed being the center of attention. He was wearing an expensive tuxedo that didn't quite fit right, like he'd rented it that morning. I got an invitation too, Marcus announced loudly, pulling out a cream-colored envelope identical to the one Zara had received. Seems like our dear Celeste was feeling nostalgic for the old college gang. Jin-Woo moved protectively closer to Zara. But before Zara could answer, Celeste stepped forward with a smile that looked like she just won the lottery. Marcus Delacroix, she exclaimed. Everyone, this is Marcus. He and Zara were the pair back at Emory, research partners if I remember correctly. The way she said, research partners made it sound like something dirty. Marcus nodded, his eyes never leaving Zara's face. Oh yes, we were very close. In fact, I think it's time people knew just how close we were, and what really happened with that research project that made such a splash in our senior year. Zara's heart started pounding. She knew exactly what Marcus was referring to, could destroy everything she'd built with Jin-Woo. Marcus, she said quietly, but he was already speaking again. See, everyone here thinks they know Zara Williams, Marcus continued, his voice carrying across the ballroom. The brilliant student, the dedicated researcher, the woman who supposedly deserved all those accolades and scholarship offers. He paused dramatically, enjoying the attention. But what they don't know is that the research project that made her famous, the one that got her into Harvard and MIT, wasn't entirely work. The crowd murmured with interest. This was the kind of scandal that would be talked about in Atlanta social circles for months. Celeste looked absolutely delighted. Really? How interesting, Marcus. Please do tell us more. Jin-Woo looked confused. Zara, what is he talking about? Zara closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them with a look of determination. If Marcus was going to tell this story, she was going to tell it right. You want the truth, Zara said loud enough for everyone to hear. Fine. Let's tell the whole truth. She turned to face the crowd that had gathered around them, her voice clear and strong. Yes, Marcus and I were research partners senior year. We were working on a project about sustainable biotechnology applications. And yes, there was more to our relationship than just academics. Jin-Woo's jaw tightened, but he didn't move away from her. Marcus and I dated for 8 months, Zara continued. And during that time, we collaborated on research that could have changed both careers. The project was groundbreaking, and we both knew it. Marcus smiled triumphantly. Finally, some honesty. Now tell them what you did, Zara. Tell them how you stole. I didn't steal anything, Zara cut him off firmly. The research was a collaboration, but Marcus decided he wanted sole credit. So he tried to sabotage my portion of the work and claim everything as his own original research. The crowd was listening intently now. This was better than any reality TV show. That's a lie, Marcus said angrily. You took my ideas and I have emails, Zara said calmly. Timestamped emails showing our collaboration, showing my original contributions, and showing your attempts to take credit for work you didn't do. I also have our professor's notes from our meetings, where he documented both our contributions to the project. She pulled out her phone. I can call Dr. Peterson right now if anyone wants verification. He's now the head of biochemistry at Stanford, and he remembers our project very well. Marcus's confident expression started to crack. But here's the part Marcus doesn't want you to know, Zara continued. When I discovered what he was trying to do, I made a choice. I could have fought it, could have destroyed his career and his reputation. Instead, I withdrew from the competition entirely. The crowd was completely silent now. I gave up my chance at sole credit, gave up my shot at certain admission to top graduate programs, because I didn't want to hurt someone I'd cared about. I thought it was the right thing to do. Jin-Woo was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. So yes, Zara said, looking directly at Marcus, you got the recognition, the graduate school acceptance, and the research fellowship. And what did you do with all that opportunity? Marcus didn't answer. He dropped out after one semester, Celeste said suddenly, her voice sharp with realization. I heard about it through the alumni network. Marcus Delacroix, the promising researcher, dropped out of graduate school after one semester for personal reasons. All eyes turned to Marcus, whose face had gone red with embarrassment and anger. That's different, he said defensively. Graduate school isn't for everyone, but that doesn't change what happened between us. You're right, Zara agreed. It doesn't change what happened. I chose compassion over competition, and I've regretted it every day since. Jin-Woo stepped forward, his voice quiet but carrying clear across the ballroom. So let me understand this correctly, he said, looking between Zara and Marcus. You're here tonight to embarrass the woman who sacrificed her own career advancement to protect your reputation. The woman who chose kindness over ambition, even when it cost her everything she'd worked for. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. That's not. It's more complicated than that. Jin-Woo asked, because from where I stand, it sounds like Zara made a selfless choice that she's been paying for ever since. While you've been carrying around guilt and resentment about success you didn't earn. The Korean businessman's voice was calm, but the steel underneath it, and now you show up here, at an event you weren't originally invited to try to humiliate the woman whose kindness you took advantage of years ago. Marcus looked around the room, suddenly realizing that the crowd's sympathy wasn't with him. You don't understand, he said desperately. Not who you think she is. She's just playing a part, wearing expensive clothes and pretending to be something she's not. Like you're doing right now, asked a voice from the crowd. Everyone turned to see Bradley Montgomery, Celeste's husband, holding up his phone. I just looked you up, Mr. Delacroix, Bradley said. According to LinkedIn, you're currently working as a sales associate at a medical supply company in Birmingham. The same job you had for the past 2 years. Marcus's face went from red to pale in seconds, and according to court records, Bradley continued, reading from his phone. You've been sued twice in the past 3 years for defaulting on student loans. Interesting way to handle all that graduate school success. The crowd was murmuring now, but the tone had shifted completely. Instead of judging toward Zara, people were looking at Marcus with disgust and pity. Celeste, realizing that her plan was backfiring spectacularly, tried to gain control. Well, this has all been very educational, she said with forced brightness. But I think we should get back to celebrating clarity, don't you? But Jin-Woo wasn't done. Actually, there's one more thing that needs to be said, he announced. He turned to face the crowd, his hand finding Zara's. My name is Jin-Woo Park. Some of you may know my company, Park Industries. What you might not know is that 6 months ago, I met the most extraordinary woman I've ever encountered. His voice was warm and clear, carrying easily across the silent ballroom. I met a woman who was working a job that was beneath her qualifications because she'd chosen family over career advancement. A woman supporting her sick mother while pursuing her dreams on nights and weekends. A woman who had every reason to be bitter about the sacrifices she'd made, but instead chose to keep helping others. Zara felt tears starting in her eyes, but they were good tears. In the 6 months I've known Zara Williams, Jin-Woo continued, she's helped me become a better businessman, a better son, and a better man. She's challenged me to think differently about success, about responsibility, and about what really matters in life. He paused, looking directly at Marcus and then at Celeste. So when someone tries to suggest that she's pretending to be something she's not, I have to disagree. Zara Williams is exactly who she appears to be. Brilliant, kind, strong, and genuine. The only thing she's been pretending is that she deserves less than everything life has to offer. The ballroom erupted in applause. Several people were actually wiping away tears. Marcus looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Without another word, he turned and walked quickly toward the exit. But as he reached the door, he turned back one more time. This isn't over, Zara, he called out. There are things about your past, about your family, that pretty boy doesn't know. Things that change everything, and with that threat hanging in the air, Marcus left the party. The crowd gradually went back to their conversations, but the energy in the room had shifted. People who had never spoken to Zara before were approaching her to introduce themselves. Business cards were being exchanged. Invitations to lunch were being offered, but Jin-Woo could see that Zara was troubled by Marcus's parting words. What do you mean about your family? Jin-Woo asked quietly as they stepped onto the hotel's terrace for some air. Zara was quiet for a long moment, looking out over Atlanta's skyline. There are things about my past that I haven't told you yet, she said finally. Things I'm not proud of. Things that might change how you feel about me. Jin-Woo took her hands in his. Zara, I don't care what Marcus thinks he knows. I know who you are, but your mother, Zara said softly. When she finds out about tonight, when she learns about my background, about the mistakes I've made, she's already chosen someone else for you, someone from your world. Jin-Woo was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled out his phone. Zara asked, "What are you doing?" Zara asked. "Calling my mother," he said simply. "Woo, it's the middle of the night in Seoul." "She's awake," he said. "She always is when something important is happening." The phone rang twice before a crisp voice answered in Korean. Jin-Woo responded in Korean, then switched to English. "Mother, I'm with Zara. We're at a charity event in Atlanta, and I wanted you to speak with her." He handed the phone to Zara, who looked terrified. "Mrs. Park," Zara said nervously, "I'm so sorry to disturb you so late." "Miss Williams," came Haewon's voice, clear despite the distance, "I have been waiting for this call. My son has told me much about you." "He has, indeed. He tells me you are intelligent, kind, and that you make him happy in ways I have never seen. He also tells me you are worried about my approval." Zara didn't know what to say. "Williams," Haewon continued, "I have spent my life in business and politics. I can recognize genuine character when I see it, even from thousands of miles away. If my son loves you, and if you make him a better man, then you have my blessing." Zara felt tears streaming down her face. "Miss Park, I thank you." However, Haewon's voice became more serious. I will need to meet you properly. Will you come to Seoul? Zara looked at Jin-Woo, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, Zara said, I would be honored. Excellent, Jin-Woo will arrange it. Wear the dress, it suits you. After they hung up, Zara and Jin-Woo stood on the terrace in comfortable silence, holding each other close. So Jin-Woo finally said, ready for Korea. Zara thought about Marcus's threats, about the secrets he claimed to know, about all the challenges that lay ahead. I'm ready, she said. But as they walked back into the ballroom, neither of them noticed a figure watching them from the shadows, someone who had heard every word of the conversation, someone who was already making plans of their own. The real test was just beginning. The Park family compound was unlike anything Zara had ever seen. Traditional Korean architecture blended seamlessly with modern luxury, creating a space that felt both ancient and contemporary. Gardens filled with cherry blossoms surrounded elegant buildings, and the entire property overlooked the Han River. But despite the beauty surrounding her, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into a trap. Since the charity gala in Atlanta, Marcus had gone silent, but his threats echoed in her mind. What could he possibly know about her family that would change everything? And more importantly, who had he told Jin-Woo had noticed her anxiety during the flight to Seoul, but she'd brushed off his concerns? Some things, she told herself, were better left buried. Now, as their car pulled through the compound gates, Zara saw dozens of people waiting on the main building steps. Family members, business associates, household staff, all there to meet the woman who had captured Jin-Woo Park's heart. That's a lot of people, Zara said nervously, adjusting her outfit. She'd chosen a conservative but elegant Korean designer dress, hopping to show respect for the culture she was entering. We're excited to meet you, Jin-Woo assured her. My mother has been talking about you nonstop since your phone call. As they stepped out of the car, Haewon approached them with regal grace. She was smaller than Zara had imagined, but her presence filled the space around her. Her hair was perfectly styled, her handbag was immaculate, and her jewelry was understated but clearly expensive. Miss Williams, Haewon said in perfect English, welcome to our home. She embraced Zara warmly, and Zara felt some of her tension ease. Thank you for having me, Mrs. Park. Your home is absolutely beautiful. Please call me Haewon. We will be family soon after all. The warmth in her voice was genuine, and Zara felt a flutter of hope. Maybe this would work out after all. But as Haewon led them toward the main building, Zara noticed something that made her heart skip a beat. Among the family members waiting to greet them was a young Korean woman about her own age, wearing a designer dress and a smile that didn't reach her eye. Zara, Haewon said, I would like you to meet Soo-Jin Lee. Her family has been close to ours for many years. Soo-Jin stepped forward with practiced grace. She was beautiful in a classical way, perfect makeup and an air of sophistication that spoke of expensive education and careful breeding. Miss Williams, Soo-Jin said politely, I've heard so much about you. What an interesting journey you've had. The pause before interesting was deliberate, and Zara recognized the same tone Celeste had used at the charity gala. Jin-Woo moved closer to Zara. Soo-Jin is studying international business at Harvard. She's home for the holidays. How nice, Zara replied, maintaining her smile. I'm sure Harvard is wonderful. Soo-Jin agreed. Of course, it helps to have the proper preparation. The academic standards there are quite demanding. Another subtle jab. Zara was beginning to understand that Soo-Jin was the Korean equivalent of Celeste Montgomery, wealthy, privileged, and used to getting what she wanted. The group moved inside dinner, and Zara found herself seated between Jin-Woo and his uncle, Jin-Woo Park, who was the company's chief financial officer. Soo was seated directly across from her, ensuring they'd be looking at each other through the meal. The conversation flowed easily at first. A1 asked about Zara's research background, her family, and her plans for the future. Jin-Woo's relatives were polite and curious, and Zara began to relax. Then Soo-jin spoke up. "Zara, I'm curious about your family history," she said sweetly. "Jin-Woo mentioned that your mother passed away recently. That must have been very difficult." "It was," Zara replied simply. "She was an amazing woman, I'm sure she was. What kind of work did she do?" Zara hesitated. This was the conversation she'd been dreading. "She was a nurse," Zara said finally. "She worked at Oakland General Hospital for 23 years. Oakland," Soo-jin repeated thoughtfully. "That's in California, isn't it? I've heard it can be quite challenging in some areas." Haewon shot Soo-jin a warning look, but the younger woman continued. "And your father, what does he do?" The table went quiet. Jin-Woo reached for Zara's hand under the table. "I don't know my father," Zara said calmly. "He wasn't part of my life." "Oh," Soo-jin said with fake sympathy. "How difficult that must have been for your mother, raising a child alone, working as a nurse. It couldn't have been easy financially." "It wasn't," Zara agreed, "but my mother made sure I had everything I needed. She worked double shifts to pay for my education, and she never complained." "How admirable," Soo-jin said. "It's inspiring how some people can overcome such disadvantaged circumstances." The word disadvantaged hung in the air like a slap. Several family members shifted uncomfortably in their seat. Jin-Woo's voice was ice cold when he spoke. "Soo-jin, I think that's enough." But Soo-jin wasn't finished. "I'm sorry if I offended anyone. I just think it's important to understand someone's background when they're joining a family like ours. After all, there are responsibilities that come with being part of Park Industries." She paused dramatically, then delivered her kill shot. "Speaking of Zara, I had coffee yesterday with a friend who works at the American Embassy. An interesting man named Marcus Delacroix. He had some fascinating stories about your college years." Zara's blood turned to ice. "Marcus was in Seoul. How possible Marcus contacted you?" Jin-Woo asked, his voice dangerous. "Oh yes," Soo-jin replied with satisfaction. "He was quite concerned about his old friend Zara, wanted to make sure she was being honest about her past." Haewon set down her chopsticks with a sharp click. "Soo, what exactly are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything," Soo-jin said innocently. "I'm simply sharing information that Mr. Delacroix felt the family should know." She turned to Zara with a smile that was pure venom. "Tell me, Zara, when exactly were you planning to mention that you were arrested during college?" The silence that followed was deafening. Every eye at the table turned to Zara, who felt like the world was spinning around her. "That's enough," Jin-Woo said, starting to stand up. "No," Zara said quietly, placing a hand on his arm. "It's okay. She's right. There are things I should have told you." She looked around the table at the faces staring at her, some curious, some concerned, some already judging. "Yes," Zara said clearly. "I was arrested during college. I was 19 years old, and I was arrested for protesting outside a pharmaceutical company that was price gouging AIDS medications." She took a breath and continued. "The protest was supposed to be peaceful, but when security guards started roughing up some of the young protesters, I stepped in to help. I was charged with disorderly conduct and resisting arrest." Soo-jin looked triumphant. "You do have a criminal record." "The charges were dropped," Zara said firmly, "and I'd do it again. People were dying because they couldn't afford medication that cost pennies to manufacture. That was worth getting arrested for." "How noble," Soo-jin said sarcastically. Mr. Delacroix also mentioned some interesting details about your financial situation during college, something about working as an exotic dancer. The gasps around the table were audible. Jin-Woo's face went white with rage. That's a lie, he said, but Zara held up her hand. Actually, it's not entirely a lie. The table went silent again. I never worked as an exotic dancer, Zara said calmly, but I did work as a cocktail waitress at a club that featured exotic dancers. It was the only job I could find that paid enough to cover my tuition and my mother's medical bills. She looked directly at Soo-jin. I worked there for 4 months during sophomore year. I wore a uniform, served drinks, and went home every night with enough money to keep my mother alive and myself in school. I'm not ashamed of that work, and I'm not ashamed of doing whatever it took to survive. Haewon was studying Zara intently. What else, Miss Williams? What other secrets is this Mr. Delacroix threatening to reveal? Zara took a deep breath. This was the moment that would destroy everything or set her free. The summer after my sophomore year, my mother's insurance company denied coverage for an experimental treatment that could have saved her life. The treatment cost $60,000. She had nothing. Her voice was steady, but tears were starting in her eyes. I spent 3 days researching insurance fraud, bankruptcy law, and medical billing procedures. Then I filed a complaint with the State Insurance Commission, contacted 3 local news stations, and organized a protest outside the insurance company's headquarters. She paused, looking around the table. The insurance company caved after a week. They covered the treatment, and my mother lived for 3 more years. But they also made sure that I was blacklisted from every major insurance company in California. My credit was destroyed, and I was essentially unemployable in anything related to health care or finance. The table was completely silent now. So yes, Zara continued, I have a complicated past. I've been arrested, I've worked jobs that some people might judge, and I've made enemies of powerful people. But everything I did to protect the people I loved and to stand up for what was right. She turned to Jin-Woo, her heart breaking at the expression on his face. I should have told you all of this before. I was afraid you'd think less of me, or that family wouldn't accept me. I was afraid that my past would ruin our future. Jin-Woo was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up and walked around the table to where Soo-jin was sitting. Soo-jin said quietly, I want you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. The woman you spent the last hour trying to humiliate is the strongest, most principled person I've ever met. She's worked harder, sacrificed more, and shown more courage than anyone at this table, including me. He paused, looking down at the woman who had tried to destroy his relationship. The fact that she fought for her mother's life, stood for people who couldn't stand up for themselves, and worked whatever jobs she could find to survive doesn't make her less worthy of this family. It makes her more worthy. He turned to address the entire table. Zara Williams is going to be my wife, whether you approve or not. But I hope you do approve, because she's exactly the kind of person this family needs. Haewon stood up slowly, her expression unreadable. She walked over to where Zara was sitting and placed her hands on Zara's shoulders. Miss Williams, she said formally, you have shown more honor in your honesty than some people show in a lifetime of perfect behavior. She turned to face Soo-jin, her voice taking on a commanding tone that brooked no argument. Soo-jin, you will apologize to our guest immediately, and then you will leave this house. Jin's face went red with embarrassment and anger. She muttered a quick apology and left the room, her dignity in tatters. After she was On, Haewon turned back to Zara. Now, she said with a smile, shall we discuss wedding plans? The rest of the evening passed in a blur of warmth, laughter, and acceptance. Family members who had been quiet during Sujin's attack came forward to welcome Zara properly. Stories were shared, plans were made, and by the end of the night, Zara felt like she truly belonged. Later, as Jin-Woo walked her to her room in the west wing, Zara finally felt like she could breathe again. "Thank you," she said simply, "for standing up for me, for believing in me, for seeing who I really am instead of judging me for where I came from." Jin-Woo stopped walking and turned to face her. "Zara, I need you to understand something. I don't love you despite your past. I love you because of it. Your strength, your principles, your willingness to fight for what's right, that's who you are. That's the woman I fell in love with." He took her hands in his. "And I need you to promise me something. No more secrets. No more hiding who you are or where you came from. You're perfect exactly as you are. I promise," Zara said. First time in her life, she truly meant it. 6 months later, Zara Williams became Zara Park in a ceremony that blended Korean and American traditions. The wedding was featured in magazines across 2 continents, not because of the luxury or the guest list, but because of the love story that had captured people's hearts. Marcus Delacroix was never heard from again, though rumors suggested he'd taken a job in another country after his visa issues in Korea were mysteriously resolved very quickly. Soo-jin Lee married a wealthy businessman's son 6 months later, but the marriage was clearly arranged rather than romantic. And Celeste Montgomery, she spent years trying to insert herself into Jin-Woo and Zara's social circle, but her invitations were consistently declined. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. Zara's story teaches us that our past doesn't define our worth, but our choices do. She could have chosen bitterness over hope, revenge over forgiveness, or hiding over honesty. Instead, she chose courage, authenticity, and love. Sometimes the people who try to humiliate us are really just revealing their own insecurities and fears. True strength comes not from having a perfect past, but from being honest about our struggles and proud of how we've overcome them. And most importantly, the right people will love us not despite our flaws and struggles, but because of the strength and character those experiences have given us. Love doesn't ask us to be perfect. It asks us to be real. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and share for more updates.